Hi, I'm Mr. Loomis. Welcome to the first lesson of our unit about the Gilded Age. This was a time at the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s, and historians call it the Gilded Age because there were some people who became amazingly rich. Gilded means covered in gold. So we're going to start our story of this time in history by talking about those people who were the richest in the country. Of course, there were a lot of people who weren't rich, and we'll certainly talk about them as well. But since it's the Gilded Age, we might as well start with the men who inspired the name of this era. Before we dive into the stories of these men, let's preview our topics. We'll talk about 5 of the greatest industrialists of the age, including Cornelius Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie, Andrew Mellon, J.P. Morgan, and John D. Rockefeller. Before we go, we'll also mention a few more of the most famous business leaders of this time who have names you might know even today. Let's get started with the man who first showed Americans how to be a millionaire, Cornelius Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was born in New York in 1794, which is just a few years after the Declaration of Independence was signed. Growing up without much education, Vanderbilt went to work in the shipping industry. Nicknamed the Commodore, he started and controlled many transportation companies. His first steamships were successful because people needed to move a lot of products during the time of the California Gold Rush and then the Civil War. After the Civil War, Vanderbilt started buying railroads. He formed the New York Central Railroad. His railroad station in New York City is still one of the largest railroad stations in the world. As he grew older, he started a tradition of philanthropy, or giving away his money, that other industrialists copied. With his money, he started Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. After some time, Vanderbilt's grandson used the family money to build one of America's largest private homes, the Biltmore Estate. Like Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie was not born rich. When he was 13, his family came to the United States from Scotland, and he stayed in Allegheny, Pennsylvania, a small town near Pittsburgh. His first job was in a cotton mill, where he earned $1.20 per week. His bosses saw that he was talented and made Carnegie the bookkeeper of the business. A passionate reader, Carnegie spent his Saturdays in the libraries of rich people's homes. After he got a job as the personal secretary for the boss of a railroad company. In the Gilded Age, the country needed steel. The railroads needed steel for their rails and cars, the Navy needed steel for their new ships, and cities needed steel to build skyscrapers. Every factory in America needed steel for their buildings and machines. Andrew Carnegie saw this need for steel and knew it was his chance to be great. Carnegie became a great industrialist because of his smart business ideas. Rockefeller often bought other oil companies to get rid of competition. This is called horizontal integration. Carnegie also used vertical integration, which is when he bought railroad companies and mine companies. If he owned the rails and the mines, he could lower his costs and make cheaper steel. Carnegie was good at noticing other people's talent also. Carnegie's assistant, Henry Clay Frick, helped make the Carnegie Steel Company successful. Carnegie wanted hard workers who wanted the company to be successful, so he made a retirement plan that shared the money the business made to the workers. Carnegie's actions made the Carnegie Steel Company successful. In 1901, he sold his company to J.P. Morgan, who paid him $500 million and renamed it U.S. Steel. Not all of the industrialists owned railroads or factories. Ever since he was young, Andrew Mellon was very good at investing and banking. In 1872, he made the coal and lumber businesses his father gave him successful. In 1889, he joined his father's banking business called T. Mellon Sons. 2 years later, his father gave him the bank. In 1889, Mellon helped put together the Union Trust Company and Union Savings Bank of Pittsburgh. He also branched into industrial activities, oil, steel, shipbuilding, and construction. Mellon helped make many different companies successful. Mellon gave money to Charles Martin Hall, who started the Aluminum Company of America, or Alcoa. He made a new industry by helping Heinrich Kupes, who invented coke ovens. These coke ovens turned industrial trash into things that can be used to make steel. Mellon also invested or gave money to the New York Shipbuilding Corporation. By the end of his life, Mellon was one of the richest people in the United States. Andrew Mellon worked in government too. In the 1920s, he was the Secretary of the Treasury when Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover were presidents. Like Carnegie, Mellon also gave away a lot of his money. Carnegie Mellon University was built using Carnegie and Mellon's money. Mellon also gave money to set up the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Not all the rich people of the Gilded Age started off without money. J.P. Morgan was born into a rich family. His father was a famous banker. Morgan used his family's money to go get to good school so he could learn about business. He had an easier time getting started than some of the other industrialists because his father got him a job at one of New York's finest banks. Morgan himself had a great mind of his own and set out to take control of the banking world. During the Civil War, Morgan made a lot of money selling things to the government and the army. After the war, he decided he wanted to control the country's financial markets. When the Panic of 1873 destroyed the country's wealth and resources, Morgan was smart enough to protect himself and became the king of American finance. Although he was called a robber baron, Morgan believed his investments helped America. His railroad dealings helped put together many smaller, badly managed companies. The result was that people could take shorter trips and service was better. During financial panics, he allowed the government to buy a lot of his gold, which stabilized prices. He owned a bridge company and a tubing company. In 1901, he bought the Carnegie Steel Company for $500 million to create U.S. Steel. In 10 years, U.S. Steel was worth over $1 billion. Morgan showed that you don't have to be a builder to become successful. Smart investments can lead to making big money. Young entrepreneurs changed their goals to banking in hopes of copying Morgan's success. For all that he did well, some people still didn't like him, especially some people in the government. His railroad was found to be illegal under antitrust law. Then Congress questioned him about his control of the financial markets. They even forced him to give up control of U.S. Steel. As a result of criticism, Morgan moved to Europe at the end of his life. People always used Morgan as an example of how the rich stole money from the poor. But he was an inspiration to enterprising financiers who wanted to be like him, unless they were destroyed by him. By the time of his death, J.P. Morgan owned or partly owned many railroads, General Electric, the American Bridge Company, and an investment bank that still exists in the form of Morgan Stanley. John D. Rockefeller was America's first billionaire. The beginning of the 20th century, while an average worker earned $8 to $10 per week, Rockefeller made millions of dollars. There are many different ways to think about Rockefeller, but we should always remember how he changed America's economy. Rockefeller was born in 1839 in Moravia, a small town in western New York, and started working as a clerk in a Cleveland shipping company. He saved enough money to start up his own company, buying and reselling products. When the Civil War came, everyone wanted his items, and Rockefeller started getting rich. When Edwin found when oil was discovered in 1859 in Titusville, Pennsylvania, Rockefeller saw an opportunity and focused on making oil a useful product that he could sell. Rockefeller changed the oil industry. In the mid-19th century, everyone wanted kerosene. Rockefeller refined oil from the ground into kerosene. But what Rockefeller did that was new was to find ways to use and sell the byproducts, or the leftovers of the oil after the kerosene was made. He sold paraffin to candle makers, petroleum jelly to medical supply companies, and even sold tar to people making roads. He was so successful that railroad companies drooled over the dream of getting his business. Rockefeller wanted rebates, or discounted prices from the railroads, and in return gave the railroad permission to ship his oil. He was able to lower the price of oil for his buyers and gained more and more money while he bought out his competitors. Rockefeller forced smaller companies to let him take control. Rockefeller bought his competitors' stock in order to control their business, but didn't change their company names. In the end, shoppers didn't know who was really making money when they bought oil products. Rockefeller did not have to do a lot of work managing all the businesses he controlled because, by having less competition, he could still make money in the end, even if he made less money on each sale. This is called a trust, when one owner controls or owns many other businesses. Rockefeller's own company, the Standard Oil Company, became the largest in America. As the new century started, Rockefeller became even more rich. With the arrival of the car, gasoline replaced kerosene as the #1 petroleum product. Rockefeller had become a billionaire. Critics said that his labor practices were unfair, and workers said that he could have paid them better and still been half a billionaire. Before his death in 1937, Rockefeller gave away half of his money to churches, medical companies, universities, and art museums. Whether he was driven by goodwill, conscience, or his Christian faith, we'll never really know, but he was a hero to many enterprising Americans. There are a few other industrialists of the Gilded Age you might have heard of that are worth mentioning before we finish. Marshall Field of Chicago started the Marshall Field and Company, a big chain of department stores. His business was known for its amazing level of quality and customer service. In the end, his company joined with Macy's. Field is also remembered for the money he gave away to the Field Museum of Natural History and for giving land to the University of Chicago. Leland Stanford was an industrialist who moved to California from New York at the time of the gold rush. He became a successful businessman and owned railroads. He was governor of California for 2 years and was also a senator for 8 years. As the owner of the Southern Pacific Railroad and Central Pacific Railroad, he had a lot of power in the West. William Clark started as a miner and salesman during the gold rush. In the end, he got to Butte, Montana, and built a mining company selling copper. Clark was called the Copper King and became a senator by cheating and buying off Montana legislators. Let's close out today by reviewing this lesson's big ideas. In the decades after the Civil War, the Industrial Revolution exploded in the North. This period saw a rise in consolidation and the development of monopolies dominated by extraordinarily wealthy industrialists. Cornelius Vanderbilt dominated the transportation industry. Andrew Carnegie led the steel industry. Andrew Mellon and J.P. Morgan were leaders in banking. John D. Rockefeller was the nation's richest man and led the oil industry. Other great industrialists at the time included Marshall Field, Leland Stanford, and William Clark. People who admired these men called them captains of industry. Those who criticized them for their underhanded competitive tactics and mistreatment of workers called them robber barons. Some of these industrialists tried to dominate all of one stage of a business. This is called a horizontal monopoly. Others bought one company at each stage of a business. This is a vertical monopoly. Sometimes they used trust to control many businesses without people knowing who is really in charge. Thank you very much. In our next lesson, we're going to think more about money and the way these industrialists and the politicians of the Gilded Age both used and misused their money. I'll see you then.